You're listening to the Motiv8d Mindset Podcast with Bobby Stein.
And his name is Chris Wyllie, and we welcome him into the show without further delay. So thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And Chris, how you doing, my friend?
Hey, Bobby. Great to see you, man. When we were doing those audio podcasts, I'm like, there's something missing, man. And what was missing was that nice, beautiful face of yours. And, just want to say hi to everyone out there. And, so basically, for work, I run my own private practice. My background degrees are in neuroscience and psychology. I work with tons of different clients, from children with ADHD to ADD, learning disorders, autism, to adults with anxiety disorders, as well as people who just simply want to optimize their memory and brain function. So I have my own private practice here in Toronto, Ontario. I do a lot of seminars and trainings, all over kind of North America. And obviously the last few years that slowed down a bit, but we're getting right back to it. And it all started from an own personal journey to overcome severe anxiety and panic attacks that really got the better of me in third year university. I was originally planning to go to law school, business kind of career, but I had a brain in big trouble and it required my full attention. So in third year university, I switched into neuroscience, psychology, and my new mission with my OCD brain was to figure out how to optimize the brain. And it just became this kind of process of beginning to share everything I was learning, starting from the technological side with the brain mapping, the brain imaging, being able to actually quantify and look under the hood and, okay, we know there's a problem there, but what's actually going on? Okay, now I got access to technologies while in university to actually measure brain activity, see where the problems were. And then I was always big, and I know you're big into health, I'm big into health, which means we're into training, we're into nutrition. So for me, it's like, okay, let's see how nutrition and different mental training and brain training, see how that can change and optimize brain function. So for me, it's just been this constant process of learning, and has allowed me to help a lot of people in the process.
Well, that's been episode number 3 with Chris Wyllie. He's just filled us in on everything and didn't even give me the opportunity to say, hey, I'm woefully underdressed and woefully underbearded. This guy is fantastic. And Chris, man, you do have a full plate and you've got a wonderful background, and we're going to learn all about that. But I have to ask you, on the last episode, a couple of things, right? Number one, we were in the middle of a lockdown, and there was that generalized fog that shadowed everything. And you were talking about the need for like some sort of a compelling future, in the midst of that crisis, how we could bring things in that were really bright and really in focus and at the front of our consciousness, not to simply take away from that feeling of, claustrophobia, doom and gloom, but really to give us something to look forward to. Mm-hmm. And you had mentioned something about Tom Brady, the champion quarterback who just retired after 7 seasons. We'll see if it sticks, but he proclaims his retirement. And I wanted to ask you this. Yeah. What does a guy like that, who say he wins Super Bowl 7 and he's gearing up for Super Bowl 8 as a matter of course, he's done it for 23 years in the NFL. How does an individual like that, with his mindset, transform or transmute into civilian life?
Right, great question. Well, you look at the Tom Brady's, the Kobe Bryant's, they're maniacal of sorts, where those are extreme examples of OCD type tendencies in brains, which they have the capacity to control and to aim into mastery at their craft. So for them, in life, we kind of chase ideas and feelings, right? So for him, he might still get that itch because that feeling of being the champion and winning and the process of getting there, it's so addictive. It's so powerful that, when you experience that now, the emotional intensity of everything compared to that, it just seems so dull, right?
Exactly.
It's like the flip side of that is like PTSD veterans coming back from overseas, where now their brain's filled with full adrenaline when they're there. Now when they come back, the adrenaline's gone and they don't feel alive in the same way. So for Tom Brady, it's going to be in essence of finding new challenges that his brain can see, be compelled by, and move towards, and apply a lot of the same thought processes where our brain needs a target. And, of course, brains, we remember the past, but also we contemplate the future. And a lot of anxiety, a lot of health issues stem from not having a clear, concise future that your brain can move towards. And that's where, even older people, one of the best ways to kind of prevent Alzheimer's and prevent degeneration is to keep building things in your mind to look forward to. So, Tom Brady's he's gonna have to find, a new challenge that for him he can kind of devote that super focus towards, because that ability to focus, to have an end goal, and then step by step focus with laser precision to master the way to get there. I mean, maybe he's going to have to apply that to now be the best dad ever, or you know what I mean? Or be, an educator. He's going to have to find a way to channel that focus, because, when you have a brain that's wired like that, you got to be able to aim it into areas where it can become functional, because if you're just sitting by yourself with that kind of OCD brain, it can cause a lot of problems like, anxiety and stuff. And that's something I experienced firsthand.
Like a pent up animal. I know he's got a contract with Fox for some multi-million, $300+ million to broadcast, but I know that's got to be different for him. I mean, with the physical contact and the thinking that goes into it. Now he'll be analyzing and stuff. I was just curious to know if you had to climb inside his head, and you explained it well, but like, what do you do? It's got to be such a, he had all this adulation.
Yeah.
He had all this, everything heaped upon him, well-deserved, and he earned it. But now in a different capacity, that's got to be a challenge, I would think. I would have to be.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, hopefully for him, he can kind of look at that chapter, have a sense of peace from what he accomplished, and then kind of do what he did at the beginning of his career, which is kind of start from ground zero and invent who he wants to become next, right? So the question for him is kind of what's next, and finding kind of the challenge or pathway for him where maybe he's got other parts to himself he hasn't been able to express or explore, maybe artistic, maybe creative, maybe business-wise, or maybe just family-wise, and experiences that he hasn't had the chance to create. So now the question is kind of what's next, and how can he, create a lifestyle which for him creates a sense of, that powerful feeling, that sense of fulfillment that obviously, you get as, competitive athlete, but knowing full well it's obviously going to be a different kind of feeling and experience.
That sense of purpose, yeah. I agree. We spoke last too, Chris, I want to just touch on, we had spoken about how, folks, we were talking about persuasion, which I want to touch on in just a little bit because I'm fascinated by that topic. But we were talking about how we market to the kids today. You said that, everybody's glued to their phone, the kids, the 13, 14, 16-year-olds, and we're going to have to learn how to market on that platform and get on the same page or the same sheet of music. But adults are also, equally as glued, if you will. And I guess the question here is, I heard a comedian say something to the effect that nobody's uploading their worries or their concerns or their shortcomings or their fears. They're only uploading the highlight reel. What do you see fundamentally, like from a brain specialist perspective?
Yeah.
What is going on there? What is that compulsion to upload good stuff, and then moreover people to watch it and then feel perhaps less than because they can't stack up or compare?
Yeah, this is really important where you're focusing your attention, knowing number one, these devices and these applications, they have been designed where they do hypersensitize, in a sense, hijack certain attentional systems in our brain, dopamine reward systems, and you know what I mean? Because we've had to scan for changes in our environment throughout our evolution. So for now, every bing, it's kind of activating those primitive networks for our brain. So knowing full well that, it is a highly addictive or potentially highly addictive, using it very strategically. And, it's like a resume, Bobby. If you're applying for a job, you're not going to be telling them about how anxious you are, the panic attacks you get, or how messed up your relationships are at home. You're going to market your best self, right? If you're submitting a resume. So, now this is just kind of it's just a blown up example of that. You do have a lot of people kind of air out their dirty laundry online and stuff. I think there's a fine line of, presenting your strengths, but then also being relatable. You want to use technology strategically because it is a new marketplace. It's just, you want to be mindful that you don't want the technology to be rewiring and taking control of your own brain. And if you're finding where now you're mindlessly scrolling and you catch yourself and boom, 10, 15, 20 minutes is gone and you were scrolling the whole time. That's the time you got to look, take a deep breath and go, shit, they got me, right?
Right.
Slow it down, put it down, and, regain your brain, because all that time before technology, all that wonderful time we would normally daydream, we would think, we would have ideas come into our mind, our unconscious would process. Now, kids, their unconscious isn't getting a chance to really deeply process their creativity, their imagination, their memory. And, memory occurs not when we're actively learning. It occurs when we take our mind off a problem. And like you said, the best thinking comes in the shower or while driving. When you take your mind off the problem, your brain state changes to a more theta brain state. Now you get that nonlinear connectivity and creative solution generation that you don't get if you're mindlessly scrolling.
Right. So the conscious mind there's a lot of turmoil. It's kind of like looking at the surface of the ocean on a blustery day. It's only when or a lake. It's when that lake surface stills that you can see the bottom. So
exactly.
That theta wave scenario allows things to bubble up, and by virtue of this Instagram and all the platforms that they're taking away from that, you're substituting it. You don't give yourself that opportunity. What do you think the long-term effects are going to be? And I mean, it's probably good for business, right? I mean, you got this anxiety. It has to create a level of anxiety, I would think, unconsciously, no?
Well, there's a few factors going on. And just to wrap up what we just talked about, it's like if you're just constantly inputting information, it's like having 1,000 files on your computer that you never really save. So when you turn the computer back on to access it from memory, the files aren't there because you didn't properly save it, right? So that's where, you do have to give your brain those rest periods where there's no input coming in to allow for memory consolidation. And, that's why, a lot of these short stimulating videos, it's 1 4-second video after the next, but you're not really getting any deep consolidation of ideas. The long-term effects of technology, well, I actually measured the effects of live cell phones next to a brain. And we did see that it overheated and overactivated neurons. So it increased beta and high beta brain waves, which is like active thinking, sympathetic nervous system activation. So it can exacerbate anxiety on a physical, biological level. Then we kind of have the kind of social comparative thing where you're seeing everyone producing, and who knows what people look like these days with the filters and stuff and AI technology. I mean, I always ask them before, like, do you look anything like your photos? I just want to check.
Just asking for a friend. Just want to know.
Yeah. Just to make sure you kind of look like that. I know I do. So it's really important now to use social media where there's the benefit of helping us to connect. Like, we wouldn't be able to connect if we weren't here. There's a ton of benefits. True. It's expanded the marketplace to get your information out there to help promote your business. But the main thing is, when absorbing content, I would really just focus on following people who you want to emulate and be like, and finding just a few teachers, maybe a handful, and less is more, where you find some genuine masters in their field and you devote your focus to absorbing their content. That's what I do. I only have a few people that I like to listen to and learn from, because we become who we listen and watch. Our mirror neurons fire and we become more like those people. So I don't listen to great speakers. I mean, I don't listen to people who aren't great speakers because I don't want to entrain to that. And then I use social media to keep up with my friends and make sure I'm liking their stuff and supporting them. So, I got a few people I actually follow, and then I got my friends I keep in contact with, and that's pretty much it.
So that's a wise use of the platforms, I think. Yeah. And you got to regain your brain. I like that saying for sure.
Absolutely, man.
Yeah, I think we become, it's been said that we become the composite average of the 5 people that we surround ourselves with most, be it financially, socially, or on, I used to ride motorcycles, and I'd always gravitate, during racing, I'd gravitate towards the faster guys and stay on their heels, just in the hopes of that mirror scenario, and just modeling myself after that. So these these platforms with the shorter scenarios, the shorter snippets, and the faster.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's designed to mine our attention. But to what
Mm-hmm.
end is the attention being mined for? Is there some sort of agenda? Are they like planting stuff in there, or is it to keep us from being our best selves? If you had to get,
Well, yeah, I mean, I
guess.
can't speak to underlying motives, but I know
Right.
in terms of a business perspective, their kind of modus operandi is to have your attention on the app for as long as possible. And the longer they have your attention, the more advertising they can sell, the more revenue they can generate. So it's really about, keeping attention, keeping you on the app, on the app, engaging for as long as possible. And that's what their revenue model is built around. So you just want to be mindful of that, right? And you want to kind of stipulate when and how you're going to use technology. And, you want to start off with kids, especially, use it as a tool where, kids get to use it from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. after dinner, after homework's done, and in a set strategic way. Because, it's good to be technologically literate because, in terms of innovation, job opportunities, you got to be, facile with technology, but you don't want it to be the point where it's consuming you, or you're spending 4 or 5 hours watching mindless TikTok videos that, ultimately are not having good effects on your brain or how you feel. And this is where, for all the kids listening to this or you listening to this, if you're on social media or you're watching stuff and it doesn't make you feel good, stop doing it. Stop watching those posts from those type of people or those types of people. Don't watch that crowd. If it doesn't make you feel good, right? If you're watching someone who's maybe better than you or has a skill you don't have or an expertise you don't have, right? Unless it's making you feel good, like an inspired, like, okay, I want to be more like that person. It's mobilizing you forward and empowering you. Okay, then using it. But if it's not making you feel that way, then just get rid of it. Don't waste your time. Because ultimately it doesn't matter. Really, it's about you just being the best version of yourself. If you're the best version of yourself, you're going to be fulfilled. And what other people are doing, it's not going to matter.
It's going to be inconsequential. Great words of advice, great wisdom. We're speaking today, once again, with Chris Wyllie, the Game Changer. And you can find him online at the Game Changer, chriswyllie.com. That's Wyllie, W-Y-L. Spell your name, my brother.
W-Y-L-L-I-E.
I just drew a brain blank.
Yeah, don't worry, man. I got you.
And at Chris Wyllie Official on Instagram and the other platforms, and tune into him because he is a model to look after, and he's got some splendid advice and some words of wisdom. Now, I noticed that you were also really enhancing your physical fitness routine.
Yes, sir.
Last we spoke, we were in lockdown, as mentioned, and you were going out into the woods and you were squatting trees and doing shoulder presses with stumps and rocks. And now you're back in the gym and you're really dialing it all in.
Yeah.
Your diet, how important is diet to the overall physiological well-being in terms of the whole body, brain, and everything? How important is diet and exercise in your estimation?
Well, I mean, it's fundamental. It's fundamental to our being. And it's more than just driving a Ferrari, right? If you got a Ferrari, you're not going to be putting regular gas in. You're going to put the premium gas to the premium maintenance. But the thing is, the difference between a car and a human being is our nutrition is not only the fuel you use, it's actually the raw materials that get integrated and built into our brain and into our body, into our nervous system, into our cells, into our muscle and lean tissue. So like you're literally building your body out of what you are consuming. And for me, it's all about energy. The more energy we have, the more capacity to do work, the more we can get done, the more we can chase our dreams, and the more we can have everything. You know what I mean? That way you can be kind of extremely imbalanced, but balanced at the same time. And so our nutrition, it really sets the tone for the neurochemistry we make, which are the neurochemicals in our brain, dopamine levels, choline levels, which play a big role in our thinking speed, our mood, our energy, serotonin levels, which have a big impact on mood, and as well as nutrients play a huge role in neurotransmitter synthesis. And a lot of times, problems like, low energy or low drive or low motivation could be a product of, nutrient deficiencies like an iron deficiency or B vitamin deficiency that can be, eminently correctable with nutrition. So nutrition, it is so important that you dial it in and you eat strategically, where you ask yourself, okay, what's the most important thing to me? Is it business performance? Is it being in the best shape possible? Is it brain performance? And then have a hierarchy of importance so that way you can eat, most of the time, 95% of the time to fulfill those goals. And then maybe the other 5% of the time, you're just having fun with your family and stuff and social and, living. So it's really important to be purposeful with nutrition. And then the health side, I mean, the brain and body go hand in hand together, my man, right? Once you get the brain right, then you got to build a body to go with it, right, Bobby? You know what I mean? So, yeah. So for me, I've always been curious as to what are the heights of health we can push the human body to, and I find that the fitness industry, I mean, it's not very healthy. It's all, drugs. And are you taking
really
drugs?
isn't.
You're not taking drugs. Not. It's like,
exactly.
There's not really any health to it. So it's like, for me, I want to push and see, kind of being in my physical prime. I want to push right now and see, okay, naturally, how big, how strong, how healthy can we get the body? Just so I can be like, hey kids, you know what? I threw everything humanly possible at getting the best shape ever. This is what I was able to do. And then it sets a realistic, it sets a realistic, it sets a realistic expectation for people to go, you know what? Okay, that's what like a jacked, natural, healthy man that's, sustainable. That's what it looks like. You know what I mean? And then, of course, Bobby, you're going to have your own version of what the jacked, healthy, natural man looks like. And it's all going to be a little bit different, but it creates an example for people that hopefully empowers them and feels like it's, somewhat realistic and somewhat attainable and achievable for them, that therefore kind of inspires them to want to achieve it,
I do. And I think it's so important. You do a lot of work, and most recently with younger people. And I think that a lot of times, I know when I was a young man, I was very impressionable, whether it was I was modeling or witnessing somebody that was, less than scrupulous, or whether it was a hero or an athlete or something like that. The physical, what I came to learn as I grew up to be an adult, Chris, is that I want to be the best version of myself. I've got one flesh suit. I've got one human biocomputer in between my ears sitting on my shoulder. Mm-hmm. I want to maximize it. I want to get, Lord willing, I make it to 90 years old and look back and say, shit, I left it all on the table. I could have done, I shoulda, coulda, woulda. I really want to do that. And I do think that nutrients being deficient, I don't go for the, if I'm deficient in this or that, or, calcium or zinc or whatever, pop a pill. Find it in foods. And speak to that. I've seen you out harvesting mushrooms. What is that all about? That's got to be great. We love mushrooms. We eat 4 or 5 different kind of mushrooms. What's the importance and key thing about mushrooms? Because they're so good for us.
Absolutely. And this is where, kind of intuitively, I was always kind of cognizant of the fact that cultures around the planet, especially Eastern cultures, they develop very sophisticated kind of medical healing and nutritional systems that work with nature. And they kind of figured out that there were certain types of plants and foods that would grow in each ecosystem that conferred kind of super kind of human medicinal properties. And that's where we have, like, in every ecosystem, we have the super health promoting berries. It's a blueberry in the northern hemisphere. It's an acai berry in the southern hemisphere. It's goji berries in the desert. It's goji berries out in Asia. And then they figured out these medicinal mushrooms, which would grow on trees, conferred super immune boosting anti-cancer type properties. And for me, when I had a brain in trouble and I was anxious and stuff, I was looking for any way to kind of activate the body's kind of superhuman powers. And it just makes sense that, the creator would create, certain foods that would, if you ate them, certain treasures that if you ate them, it would confer, these health promoting benefits. And it just turns out that in a lot of, plants, especially like roots, like ginger, ginseng root, even things like beets, there's tons of potential healing properties in these plants and foods that as we consume them, they help, energize and bring our body to a new level. And I've always been dialed into that. And then also I had the benefit of having actual 20 plus channel EEGs to test the effects. Okay, this is how a reishi mushroom changes and improves brain function. This is how a ginseng.
So you've got tangible evidence. Yeah.
Exactly.
Tangible. Yeah, because
Yeah.
and that's really cool that you afford yourself with that kind of equipment and knowledge and expertise to operate it and read it and analyze it. So
Yeah.
that's so cool. Shifting gears now, the power of persuasion.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, we need to have full on brain capacity, running optimally, and having our bodies, just like we talked about, be running super efficient as well. How important is persuasion as a skill set to have, not only in business, but personally? We spoke about it last
Yeah.
episode. I thought it was compelling. I'd like you to share again. Just persuasion. How do you do it?
I mean, persuasion and communication, it's fundamental to our existence, to our, surviving and thriving as a human being or not. And, humans, we're social creatures, and communication, social communication has been fundamental to our evolution. So communication, persuasion is everything. And it starts with, being able to influence and galvanize and move other people internally. It starts with being able to internally control and move yourself. And our brains are entrainment machines. When we're talking here together, our brains begin to entrain. And as I adjust my internal state, it begins to influence you, and your state begins to entrain with me. So there's a lot of mechanics to persuasion. Number one is being able to control and change your own physiological state and use that almost as the meter that other people can entrain to. And it's very, very important to, become more charismatic. Is you want to think about, okay, what are the emotional states I want to elicit and induce in the audience, in the recipient, and then begin going into those states yourself and taking them there. And then there's the element of linguistics, language. And language, this is one of our primary tools for persuasion. And we have a lot of mechanics of language. We have embedded suggestions in our language. Like, I'm wondering when now would be a good time to, consider buying a new car. Buying a new car. When would now be a good time to, begin to relax? We have embedded suggestions in our language. Then we have the essence of tonality, which has an impact on question tones. Usually go up in tonality. Hey, Bobby, are you looking for a new car? Hey, Bobby, are you looking for a new car? Right? So command tone goes down. So being able to control tonality, being able to control embedded suggestions. Then we have both levels of conscious communication, unconscious communication. So this is where I learned and studied personally with Dr. Richard Bandler, the creator of NLP, to kind of learn how our brain processes language unconsciously. Then we have physical mechanics of body language and how that influences each other, right? Because you can tell, like you can look across the room and you can tell whether or not, a member of the opposite sex is interested in you, right? You can tell. The best is the unconscious look, not the conscious look. It's the unconscious look. And all these things. So,
so important.
People ask, what do I say to, pick up a girl across the room at the gym? Well, first, you got to be able to read the signals. And if you get the signal, the green light, then you drive,
Right. You don't hit the gas at the stop sign, brother.
So there's so many, nuances to human communication. And the more conscious you can be of them, the more you can strategically tailor your communication so that it registers perfectly with the brain of the recipient you're talking to. Like, I'll just give you one example, right? I was talking to someone who wanted to come to a seminar I was doing. And this gentleman, God love his soul, but he was speaking at 1 word per minute. Now, if I pick up the phone, I say, hey, you know what, John, I got the seminar you want to go to. It's going to be great. You're going to learn about memory. You're going to learn about your brain. Like, he's not going to process 1 ounce of what I just said because I'm talking 10 times faster than him, right? So I got to calibrate to John. I slow down to match his rate of speed until our brains are entrained. Then I begin to speed up a little bit just to get the conversation, finished in not 30 minutes, but 15. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So that's just an example where
I love that. Yeah.
That's just an example.
Go ahead.
That's just an example where our brain processes language at the same speed at which we tend to speak. And when you know that, you can just calibrate to the person you're talking to and match them perfectly.
Yeah, I love the whole dynamic of communication I think is absolutely fascinating. I think it's an IQ of sorts that the better you master that people skill
Yes.
of people skills, the more successful you'll be. One may not be so adept at arithmetic or mathematics or anything, but if you can be empathetic towards another individual, find that common ground and then meet them there. Like you're preparing the soil before you put the seed in, right? You're not just going to go sprinkle seeds on tarmac or asphalt. And it's just always fascinating. I love reading in it. I love listening to you speak about it.
Yeah.
I love that. I listen to a thing it seeps into my subconscious mind. It's a program on self-talk.
Yeah.
And I just, I go in for anything that, will make me be a better version of myself. That's just what I gravitate to.
Yeah.
And about the tonality, you're great. They'll say a statement. You are a wonderful listener. You are a wonderful listener. You are a wonderful listener. And they'll do it 2 or 3 different ways or 4 ways with different tonalities. Mm-hmm. And subconsciously, you let this thing run in the background, almost like as an aside. Mm-hmm. And it kind of gets in there. Speak to the subconscious mind and how things, like you said about earlier, the theta waves. Mm-hmm. Well, what about when we go to bed? What's the key importance of just before we drift off to sleep and wake up in the morning? Yeah. Why are those 2 times a day important? And what can we do to really maximize and take advantage of those 2 times per day?
Great question. I mean, first off, Bobby, you're a highly successful, communicator, experience in sales. You know what you're doing.
Don't have the beard though, man. I don't have the beard.
You know what, man? You just haven't needed it. I can just add an element of fear. And just, have the beer and the penetrating eyes and go, yes, you will buy this, or else. You will buy this. No, right. I wouldn't do that. But yeah, I love what you said, preparing the soil and then planting. The biggest turnoff is when someone goes to, sell something to you and they've done no preparation, no preparing the soil, no common ground. It's, you have not earned the right to sell me anything, pal. But, if you're taking the time and you're building that rapport, you're finding the common ground, you're preparing the soil. Now I'm going to at least look at what plants you got to sell me,
Exactly.
So,
on LinkedIn, it's funny on LinkedIn real quickly, there's a platform out there and you'll get a lot of, people reaching out and contacting you. You'll accept the connection. And the next message is, it's like, look, buy me dinner first. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Before we go on the date here, it's like the soul hasn't been prepared. There really is no rapport being established. And that circles back to the communication skill set and having that awareness when you're with somebody. And again, looking at, trying to attract a member of the opposite sex, man or woman. I mean, you have to be able to read signs and have your antenna up and be, tactful. And it's an art in of itself, man. And I love to hear you expound.
Yeah, I mean, there's an art and science to it. The science component is there are certain patterns and structure that we can learn to become, more effective communicators, cues we can learn. And that's I actually got a whole online program called Brain-Based Persuasion, which was a 4-day event I did. So that's online and viewable. And communication is kind of the fabric of being human. So it can make or break, it's all about relationships. So it's all about being able to, communicate ideas, communicate feelings, and then, help people to take action based on that. Now, moving back to the question on kind of our subconscious, great question. So our subconscious, yes, it tends to be more programmable in the sense that ideas get consolidated into memory more in those hypnagogic theta type states. So that's, before bed, when you first get up in the morning, when you're in the shower, when you're driving in the car. So I always recommend for people, before your eyes fall asleep in that hypnagogic state, maybe pull up an image or two, a target in your mind that you want your subconscious to go, to send it into a direction. And you'll notice that when you're solving a problem and you take your mind off the problem, the subconscious will keep problem solving in the background and in nonlinear ways to try to find you the solution. So you just want to kind of get those natural problem-solving processes working for you. And that's just where, as your brain waves shift from beta, you're alert, to alpha, your mind's kind of at rest, to then theta, you start going into that hypnagogic state. When your mind's at rest, maybe just pull up an image or two or target of what you want your brain to move towards in the future, just so that as you go into that hypnagogic state, that kind of crystallizes into your memory. And really what our brain does is it learns patterns, it learns habits, then it automates them. So most of behavior, most of how we respond and how we feel, like how we feel public speaking or how we feel giving a talk or how we feel meeting new people, are automated responses from the past. So you want to be the one consciously programming them.
Yeah, it's a great tool at our disposal. And if we can consciously remember to do that, I think we can use it to our good end. I know I try to take full advantage of it. I use my imagination, my image maker, and I couple it with feelings and all the sensory perceptions of reality as I drift off. And I try to recall to do the same thing in the morning. And I'll be honest with you, you know, the neat thing about it, and I'm sure it's universal, but for me, like you said, it kind of runs in the background like a computer, like grinding while I'm off in, you know, dreamland. Speaking of dreamland,
yeah,
what are dreams all about? I mean, what do you make of dreams? I've been forever, you know, fascinated with those as well. I think that they're just so elusive, though. What is your take on that? Dreams?
It's a great question. So dreams typically occur during REM, rapid eye movement sleep states. And during sleep dreaming states, there's different altered patterns of brain connectivity. So there's heightened connectivity between emotional sensors and sensory centers of our brain, where our frontal lobes, which are kind of like the CEO and the inhibitor, they get deactivated. So our brain is kind of left all, you know, uninhibited to kind of connect things in new ways. And now for dreams, there's one aspect where if you know, Bobby, if you're in a grocery store and you are bagging beans all day, we can pretty well guarantee you're going to be bagging beans that night, you know, because our brain will mechanically reactivate circuits that were activated throughout the day to consolidate them and strengthen them. So there's a big aspect of mechanical rehearsal to dreams. Now, there is another aspect of nonlinear connectivity where now we have all these different bits of information our brain was exposed to throughout the day and even days before. Now, during dreams, our brain connects them in nonlinear ways. And our frontal lobes aren't there to inhibit that process. And then number 3 with dreams, there's kind of the unknown. And, you know, like guys like Freud had all these elaborate theories of wish fulfillment. You know, he did consume a lot of, you know, high level substances such as cocaine while, you know, theorizing and generating these ideas. So, I'm not sure if it is wish fulfillment. If you like the dream, say yes. If you don't like the dream, then just say no. You're imposing your will. And then there's a big aspect of physical recovery. And that typically occurs in our deep sleep states where there's ATP replenishment. So REM sleep's super important for procedural and motor learning. So for consolidating a new martial art, a new workout, a new, you know, musical skill or a new linguistic skill or something you're learning, REM sleep helps consolidate that. Deep sleep helps with episodic memory, which is kind of like memories for facts and events. And, you know, you want to get both. So you want to, you know, ideally you want to get at least 5 kind of sleep cycles of deep sleep and then REM sleep throughout the night.
Gotcha. I'll continue to study it. It's like I said, it's a fascinating, elusive thing and phenomena that it's just, it's really cool. You mentioned at the outset in the opening, you kind of gave us a thumbnail sketch of your background. Mm-hmm. You had said, because for somebody that has a good understanding of the topic and the brain, et cetera, your brain was broken as an adolescent. What was it broken with? I mean, what was the damage
first off,
that you had to identify?
Yeah. So first off, the notion of a broken brain is nonsense. I mean, I work with autistic kids, the most, you know, severely pathological cases. These kids' brains aren't broken. Is the functionality and the wiring is altered. That's it. Right. So for me, I had these problems, particularly anxiety, panic attacks, and OCD type tendencies. Yes. And I had no control over it consciously, and the wiring was off a little bit. So, I mean, the brain wasn't broken. It was just a machine that needed, A, it needed controlling consciously, and then B, it needed a little bit of rewiring. But it was a good machine, Bobby. I mean, I was still getting high 90s in all the courses. I just was anxious all the time. And then it was just getting worse and worse.
You had mentioned it. You had like a broken brain. reiterating what you said, but no, I'm in agreement with you. I think that it's like a car that's running an 8-cylinder that's running on 4 cylinders and 4 pistons are shot. So
no, I just said that emphatically because people put out the notion of a broken. No, not you, Bobby. Other people wrote like programs called Broken Brain, and then I got people coming to my office saying my brain's broken, and I go, "How do you know that?" And they go, and they go, "Well, someone told me my brain was broken," and I go, "Okay." Right. Well, all right. So what are you using to think right now? I'm using my brain to think right now. Interesting. And you can evaluate the status of the 100 billion neurons in your brain. Can you? And they go, I don't think so. Okay, well, I can. Now let's get to work together. So,
sure.
Yeah. So I wouldn't say the brain is broken. I would say there are, as opposed to learning disorders, I would say learning differences. And then there is, just in the case of autism or anxiety or even things like PTSD, is we have experiences that alter the wiring of our brain. Where now, let's say our amygdala, our fear center, gets hypersensitized. So now it hyperactivates. Now you go into a social situation and your amygdala hyperactivates, produces this intense physical, stress response inside you that then overwhelms your cognitive capacity to think. So it becomes a dysfunctional thing. All right. I would say it's a broken thing. It's just a thing that needs a little rewiring, a little reengineering.
And that, of course, is your specialty. You are a brain specialist, the Game Changer, Chris Wyllie. Find him at thegamechangerchriswyllie.com and at official Chris Wyllie on Instagram. First ever YouTube appearance on the Motiv8d Mindset Podcast. And we're going to run this out. We're going to trot it out there. We're going to run it up the flagpole. We're going to do all those idioms and all those cool things to see if we can get some traction. So I'd like the audience to hear the same things that I've been enamored with Chris in the past. Chris, it's so awesome to talk to you, brother. Self-persuasion, tonality. We talked about mushrooms, which was, that was key because, my nephew harvests them and he sells them to local markets and restaurants. And
interesting.
We love mushrooms. Yeah, we love mushrooms. I didn't mean to say again it was a broken brain, but I know you were anxious, or you suffered from anxiety or levels of anxiety. Because Bobby, I can relate to that.
Yeah.
And for you to come out and be so on top of your game and actually teaching people how to overcome it, was that an inspiration, or was that a motivating factor for you to get into the work that you do now, the things that you had gone through as an adolescent?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And just on the thing of the broken brain, it's just not that you said it, Bobby. It's just that other people put the idea out there. And then unfortunately, a lot of people kind of, for better or for worse, they self-diagnose themselves and they have the idea that their brain is broken. Yeah. Where, like, I'll have kids who the parents tell me that the kid's brain is broken, it doesn't work properly. And yet I'll look across the room and they're glued to an iPad, focusing, reading, learning, mastering a game for hours. Like it's nothing. Right. So their brain can focus. It's just how can we get their brain to focus to process math or in school? So I think it's just an important nuance people need to know about. But nothing, no problem to you for saying it, my man. Right. And then in terms, this was kind of my stimulus. Having that personal problem was my kind of, that breakdown for me was my doorway to break through. And that was kind of my, calling. So for me, it's just been a full-out mission to optimize the human brain, to optimize human health for over a decade now.
You just stole my thunder. My last question was, what is your mission and purpose in life? And you just said it. So there you go. Symbiotic entrainment. We're on the same wavelength, on the same brain level. Great mission. It's a worthy objective. You're going to continue to become and unfold into your very best self, Chris. It's so cool that you hung out and talked with me today. It's so cool that you hung out and spoke with me today. See, I get a little nervous on the TV here, on the video camera, so you have to bear with me.
Oh, it's all good, man. It's all good. You're doing great, man.
But folks, I've been speaking with Chris Wyllie once again, and we want to thank you for your eyeballs and your ears and your attention. And until next time, make sure you go and visit Chris, like we said, at thegamechangerchriswyllie.com, at official Chris Wyllie. Check out all his offerings. He gives classes to, he speaks in front of crowds, school systems, universities, businesses, personal one-on-one coaching, mentoring. You reach out, you will be glad you did. I'm glad I did. And until next time, folks, please take good care.
You've been listening to another episode of the Motiv8d Mindset Podcast with your host, Bobby Stein. Thank you for tuning in.